Welcome to our October board meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Wade, for bringing your group here. I appreciate all the people that have attended tonight. We did start at 6 o'clock. We had a very short time in closed session on personnel, and then we spent some time just doing some board development discussion during the time between our closed session and our open, and now we are back in open, ready to begin this meeting. I first need approval of the minutes from our September meeting.
So approved.
Second.
Any discussion or concerns about those minutes? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any changes in the agenda?
As written.
Okay, I need approval of the agenda for tonight.
So moved. Second.
Mark? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have an item, and at each board meeting, we allow public to make comments on the agenda items or to come forward and speak. And if there's anybody in the audience right now that would like to make any comments on agenda items, you are welcome to come forward. If not, know that that opportunity always exists. Administrative reports, starting with our student reports. Welcome, Anea and Sophie. And we have a report.
We do. It was a
Thank
nice little
you.
gift. I started out with mine overgone. It's meant to be a surprise. I'm glad to be back. Do you want to start off?
Sure. Okay, so the first club we're gonna just touch on is Pay It Forward. Currently, we're applying for a grant to start a compost program with the Madison Civics Club. Also, we're gonna be working the Schuster's Farm Haunted Wagon Ride, which we won first place last year. And this year we're dressing up as like creepy dolls and clowns, so hopefully they'll regain their status. And then a big thing that actually a couple clubs are in is Food for Kids. And this will be it's like October?
Yes. In a
Yes.
couple
Coming up.
weeks. I
Yes.
think like at least 6 clubs are
Mhm.
planning on doing it right now, so it's kind of going to be a big deal.
Mhm.
Hopefully you're going to see a lot of students there.
Yep, and the whole school is fundraising for that right now with something called Change for Change, where you can bring in spare change to your homeroom. It's a little competition between them all. Next up is National Honor Society, and they're currently working on preparing for Halloween in the Halls, which is just a community organization for kids, where kids will have like a safe place to go trick-or-treating a few days before Halloween and just collect candy throughout like the decorated halls, and there'll be some games set up in the commons. And
All right, so our next club is DECA. And coming from homecoming week, I'm not sure if any of you heard, but there was a Make-A-Wish fundraiser that was happening at our school. They ended up raising $675.47 for Make-A-Wish, which is super awesome. And the kind of reward for that through the fundraising at the lunches was that Mr. Grabarski had to shave his beard, so he now has a nice little like handlebar beard. It's very unique. It's a nice look for him. So that happened with DECA. All of us were very entertained. Otherwise, there was dye Mr. Kirsten's hair, or Borowski had to shave something.
His head.
Shave his head.
which is
I wasn't sure about that one, but it worked out. And going from there, DECA's also working at Arboretum to help during parent-teacher conferences. So they'll be watching kids and helping kind of make sure kids are in the right spot so parents can actually have those conferences that they're looking to have with teachers. They also are one of the many clubs that are helping with Food for Kids, so you will see them there as well. Another club is Above the Influence, and they just finished working with the homecoming speaker, Johan Killian. He seemed to be a pretty big hit among all the high schoolers. He came in, gave a good message, got some kids to laugh, but also made some good points, and they're hoping, and we are hoping to build off his message. Some of the ideas that were brainstormed at our last meeting include a school-produced music video, because one of his main ideas was, what are you going to produce with your life? So we're kind of hoping to maybe get like a cool music video or music theme going through that, and do interviews with students throughout the student body about what they thought about him and maybe what we could do to bring in somebody similar to him for prom. And we're also doing our Red Ribbon Week. Oh, I can't speak tonight. And we're hoping that's coming up in the future. And finally, we're going to student council. We have blood drives coming up in November on the 6th and the 7th, I believe are the 2 dates. So anybody from the community is welcome to come and do that. And we're hoping to kind of give a little bit more of a heads up to students, because a lot of the times in the past we've struggled with getting students who are under the age of 18 to get parent signatures in time. So we're really going to try and push that initiative. We're also starting a new point system to help keep track of volunteer hours. So each type of volunteer opportunity is worth a different number of points, and it's kind of almost a competition to get people to kind of volunteer and engage more in the volunteer activities we have going on, so the student council body is more engaged. We also are starting Popcorn Fridays, which is something new this year. We're hoping to use the popcorn machine that either the theater has or invest in our own and sell popcorn for $1 at lunch on Fridays. I believe that's starting next week, but with all the Fridays that we have off coming up, we're kind of trying to figure out which days are gonna work out. Obviously, none of us are complaining about that though. We're all very happy.
So we can change that.
Fridays off?
I don't
You
know,
guys
but-
don't go to school on
We gotta
Fridays?
look at that schedule.
I do.
I don't know, I think it's good the way it is.
I think it's nice, like,
I think
mental
we're
health
good.
day.
Great schedule, isn't it, now?
And as Sophie mentioned, there's also trick or can going on, so we're going around collecting a bunch of cans from all the different neighborhoods throughout Waunakee, and some that aren't even in Waunakee, some are a little bit on the edge. But we're going to do lots of trick or can fundraising, collect cans to go to the food pantry, and we're hoping that's as big of a success as it was last year. And finally, we are also doing Food for Kids, so another club that you have going to Food for Kids this year.
And Food for Kids this year is going to be at the high school,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
I
They
believe so.
moved it from the,
They outgrew
because
it.
of size,
Yeah,
so
I
I
was
think
gonna
it's
say.
actually at the high school.
That's
It's
awesome.
very cool.
Yep. Their
Yeah.
goal is to fill an entire shipping container that day and send it out.
That would be awesome. I think we've got it down.
Okay.
With all the clubs that are gonna be there, we've got all sorts of ready hands to go.
Cool.
It's a 40-foot container.
So, yeah, they do a couple hundred, yeah. I don't wanna quote it wrong, but I think they do a couple 100,000 meals on that day.
Yeah.
And it's all day long, and I forget how many volunteers it is. It's hundreds.
You
and
kind of buy
hundreds.
a table, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
All the
So-
civic groups and families sign up, but there's a lot of folks who are there.
Is that where you put the meal?
The beans
In
and
the
rice.
bag.
Yeah.
Beans and rice and oatmeal.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Mick Holm in the community, that's one of his organizations, so.
Do you guys have any other questions?
Great update.
Perfect.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you, this is really nice.
I love having
Of
the
course.
printed copy, but I don't want to give you extra work, but this is a nice treat.
We're hoping to maybe get some pictures next month too, because I know that was a hit last year.
Okay.
I think
Oh.
what we're gonna do is amend the agenda for tonight, looking at Fridays off.
All right.
No, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that.
See
I'll
what
have
you
to make a note
started?
for that next month.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Continue with the administrative reports. Kyle and Ashley on the teacher update. You always have to follow the students, that's a drawback.
We get to go before the student representatives so that we don't have to follow that.
We weren't as well planned and don't have a
We
written
don't have-
summary
you
for
know.
it.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Sure. Our goals this year center around professional development and social justice. On the social justice side, we just want to say that we're very appreciative of the Student Financial Assistance Committee as well as the Holiday Committee that is in the works, with the hopes that maybe that morphs into kind of a more long-lasting inclusivity committee.
And we don't have quite as many events going on to help out as high school does, but we are doing working with the WNC to help provide them with a shed to store some of their outdoor equipment, different things that they need, and excess supplies that they have, or not excess, but the supplies that they have that do not fit inside the building. We started a couple fundraisers. We did one through Rocky Rococo's, I believe, last year, as well as working with the Lone Girl, who have been great partners in helping us with that. And we'll continue to work through donating from our own funds as well to help raise that money to do that. So I believe those are our only two big updates for
And we're also partnering with the high
There you
school
go.
class to actually
That's true.
build the shed.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Oh,
a good
very
service
fun.
learning
Yeah.
project for them.
Fun.
so.
Kids always like to do things with
Yes.
teachers.
Do you guys have Fridays off?
I'm not
I was gonna
doing
say,
enough
this week all
Fridays
these
off.
Fridays off, if we have conferences, professional development, so.
Sorry, guys.
All right, I think that is all
Thank
for us
you.
this month. Any questions for us?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Continuing in the administrative reports, are there any board members that would like to share?
We have to go back to public comments.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna go back, as soon as we finish this, I'm going to go back to the public comment. So, any board members that want to share activities that they participated in, conferences, anything that they went to? Now's the time. If not, What I would like to do is go back, we had a late person come in with a public comment. Ms. Barak, Mr. Barak, if you'd like to come forward?
Thank you. Sorry for being late.
No worries.
Trying to put kids down for bed, so we
no
have
worries.
a new one, so it's splitting two parents 3 ways.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
My name is Ariel Barak. I'm here to speak about the holiday policy. I'm speaking in support of the holiday policy, and you've all heard me say this before. I think it's a big step forward. I think it clarifies and asks lots of good questions and has teachers and administrators also think about good questions about, if we're putting up XYZ in the classroom or we're talking about this, why are we doing that? Is there a good reason to be doing that? And also make sure that when it's done, it's not going to just be Christian stuff that's being done, that there's kind of a mandate that if you're going to do something, you got to do a few. So there's kind of the emphasis on multiculturalism, which I think is really important. I'm also here to support the draft that has itemized days. Lots of schools in Dane County do this. I don't think it's a particular hardship. I think there are lots of benefits to teachers. I think it gives them a set number of days that they know what to schedule around instead of kind of waiting to see, well, when do I get that 1 week notice? Now that's not going to cover every holiday for Christians or for Jews or for Muslim folks, but I think for the ones that are considered the most important holidays for those religions, you'll have those in the calendar and know to work around those. So I think that's a benefit to teachers, and I think it's a benefit to the whole community. It also shows inclusivity. Additionally, I think I was going to speak to, there's a clause in here that speaks to kind of demonstrating sincerely held beliefs, and I think it's an unnecessary thing, and I talked with Tim, and I think that there's some indication that maybe other folks might feel like that's not something that should be in there, so I'd support.
Which number are you talking about?
Both I'm looking at 8.
Okay.
I think it's 8. There are 2 versions of 8.
You're gonna
I think
see-
in both of them.
Okay.
In the copy you see, Julie, I actually crossed it off.
Okay.
And that'll be something I present when I talk about the policy
Okay.
tonight.
Oh,
Similar-
sorry to ruin your thunder here,
No,
Randy.
okay.
Tim just gave me the
It's
quick
good.
update.
No,
so.
yeah, what he is speaking of is a language that I have aligned through person feedback from other discussions around the board that I just thought, as Tim and I talked about, it made sense to make that amendment. So we crossed that language out, and it'll be part of our discussion tonight of kind of why we did that and go from there.
Okay, great. And then I guess I kind of had a quick clarifying question to get in people's head for. So some of this says that so you'd be excused from an exam or major project, and then it says major project at least 20% of students' overall grade. So that's all exams, that's off the table, and then in addition to that, we're not talking about only if the exam is more than 20%.
Correct.
Right? That's
All exams are off the table, and then trying to define larger projects.
Okay, and I was hoping that was the case, and then I would advocate to maybe move that 20% down a little bit. I think that's a pretty high bar, and I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time, obviously, since I was in elementary school or high school,
Right.
But it seems to me like there weren't a lot of projects that met that there was a lot more quantity, and other than that, let's see. The spelling of the 2 Jewish holidays, I would also advocate, if you're going to do it right. Yom Kippur, Kippur,
You gotta fight me. Hold on.
not ER. Some people say Yom Kippur, but that you will never hear someone who knows how to speak Hebrew say that. Kippur instead of ER.
You are, all right, thank you.
Oh.
And then Passover should be just one word.
One word, yep,
Yep.
I agree with that, yep, thank you.
So, thank you very much for your time.
speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to strategic plan. So we have the planning framework.
Yeah, if I can just have you
We're
pull
gonna
up
have
the
a little
framework,
update.
Rebecca, I think I can speak right from there. Last month, what you saw was an updated version of our framework. You provided some feedback with regards to just some cleanup language with regards to the vision statement and the aspirations on the top, and you'll see that has taken place. But you also provided some feedback with regards to some of the boxes that found themselves on the strategic plan. And as we talked about them through our administrative team that same week, there were some modifications that I made. So I've articulated 3 of them within your notes that I just want to share with you tonight. First of all, last month when I talked to you, we had student activities really titled differently, and it was up here in its own green box. Through some dialogue around our administrative table, we felt that it certainly has a place here, but we felt that it felt really under the structures for supporting learning, because it's an extension of our learning environment. It's specifically not on the academic side, but on the support side as far as some things that also support what we're doing in the classroom and kind of a well-rounded part of our education. So we felt from purposes of having it on here and articulating where it fit, we felt that it fit under support structures for learning. So you'll see student activities at the bottom there. And the definition of that is really yet to be determined a bit. That's probably the one blue box that is one that we have some work to do. I know we had some conversations during our board development time around like co-curriculars and where does that fit. I think there's some room within that box to really help us define kind of where we want to go. And I'll be working with the co-curricular committee probably to help define some of that. It also expands beyond just middle school, high school, but there are activities that we have at our elementaries as well, so we don't want to forget that aspect. The second change that you'll see is way over on the right under stakeholder engagement. Under information and public relations, I added newspaper and print media solely as a place that we are going, because that's some of the goals that we have around and through your board goals, that we would have ways that we are looking to link in letters to the editor, letters that were to be written at different times of the year by the board. So I thought I would articulate that on here because that's certainly a piece that's part of our goal structure. And then the third part is we talked about where does student and staff engagement. We just had a discussion and we will be signing up tonight about staff listening sessions, but we've also really made more of a concerted effort over the last year to engage with students. So we felt as we're looking at involvement, it's both students and staff and some of our engagement with them. So really the changes that you see are those 3 pieces, the student activities aspect, just articulating more about how we're going to be sharing information and disseminating information, and then also making sure that we're engaging with students and staff. So from our perspective, these are really the main moving parts and the areas that we're looking to continue to move the bar on. And some of them are continuing, and some of them are new aspects for us within our work. So with that, I will ask for any questions that you have as we've kind of revised this since you last saw it last month.
Good work.
So if there's no questions, I would ask that the board adopt this so that we can use this as our official framework. I will then be putting together a schedule where really the blue boxes for discussion will be coming back to the board, and you'll be seeing monitoring reports on those that'll talk about what that work entails and looking at how we are moving that piece of our organization forward. Julie.
I move approval of the updated strategic plan as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion on the plan as Randy has presented? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. The social media.
All right. So it's my pleasure, Heidi. This is your time. And I apologize, I walked right past you when you were sitting in the back of the room.
Meeting other people. We've seen each
There you
other
go.
before.
So this is Heidi Feller. Heidi Feller is from Social Schools for EDU, and they're the group that really manages our social media efforts. So now that we've been in it since August, starting as a soft
Been in
start
the
and
game
moving
for a
forward,
while, yep.
I asked Heidi as our first monitoring report, as you could see on our strategic plan, was social media. And I wanted to give her an opportunity to say how have our early results been going and to introduce herself and their company to the full board.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come tonight, guys. I really appreciate it. I know that you're busy people and that you have a lot on your agenda, so I will hopefully not take up too much of your time. I swear I did not move anything. So anyway, I don't know if you guys recognize this picture, but this happens to be your cover photo for Facebook. So if you're out there on Facebook and you are following the school district's page, you probably are going to see that. You're also going to see that change in a few days because These cover images change about once every 3 months. Yeah, we keep things current, man. There's no grass growing underneath us. So anyway, the name of our company is Social School for EDU, and our mission is to celebrate students and connect communities. And we do that using the very powerful tool of social media, right? We've been doing that since about 2014. And as Randy just said, we signed on with you guys and started posting on your behalf early August, and we're super happy to be part of your team. And as you're going to see tonight, and if you're out there on social media following those channels, you know that your story is absolutely getting out there. So what we do is help you celebrate your school one story at a time. You guys are already doing that. As board members, you celebrate your school or your district one story at a time. Sometimes that story is, I swear I'm not moving. Herb, are you doing that to me? You guys celebrate your district one story at a time. Sometimes that story is just maybe a conversation you're having with someone. Maybe you're submitting something to the newspaper. Perhaps you're at a sporting event and you're talking to other community members. And we just take that sort of celebrating to the next level, again, by using social media. This is Andrea Gribble, the founder of our company. And Andrea started this company in 2014 by starting to celebrate her own student's school district after the request of her superintendent. And we have now grown to more than 70 school districts that we partner with, primarily in Wisconsin. That is definitely our home state, but certainly a number of them in Minnesota, and we're branching out into other states. We have more than 200 social media posts under our belt, which means that if you can imagine it, we've seen it. So we have a lot of expertise in helping celebrate students, in using the tool appropriately, in responding to things when things need to be responded to. My name is Heidi Feller, as I said. I'm the Chief Inspirational Officer for this company. So as I always say, not only do I have the coolest job title, I actually have the coolest job. And I'm a former educator and school PR person. So before Andrea stole me away, I was embedded within a school district you happen to play on a regular basis, the school district of Reedsburg. So why would you use social media to tell your story? Well, the numbers speak for themselves, right? 84% of adults have a smartphone. More than 60% of them get their news through it in some way, shape, or form, right? And most of those people have a smartphone. How does that impact your school district? You can see that. When you're telling your own story, there are far fewer misconceptions, right? Because we know in the world of education that in lieu of an actual story, people are happy to make up information, right, about you and start telling stories. And so if you're busy using social media to help tell your story and tell it accurately, then people have less time and less opportunity to make those stories up. Also, you're sharing all of those great moments that happen each and every day in the classrooms. Most of your community members can never make it to your classroom, right? So why not use this tool and show them, give them a little peek into what's going on each and every day. It helps build trust and transparency and really show all those amazing things that your students and staff do. It helps with lots of other things, including referendum and things like that, which we're here to help you with when you get there. This graphic really explains things well. While your team here at the School District of Waunakee is busy educating students, our team is doing one thing, and that is telling your story using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And we use the same system in every single school district that we partner with, and this is the same thing that we do with all the districts. You have a social media email address, and everything that happens within your school district, all of those lovely things that these young ladies talked about at the high school, right? I can hardly wait to see those on your Facebook page because we're already getting great stories, right? They all get funneled through that social media email address, and they go to your social media account manager, who's responsible for posting, uploading, and monitoring that conversation, and that does mean 24/7. Sometimes we get some very weird phone calls in the middle of the night. We're happy to take them. That's why, right? Happens very infrequently, but that's part of why we've partnered with you or you've partnered with us. This is your account manager for your district. Her name is Tracy Sins. She acts as an extended staff member with your folks here in Waunakee. And again, as I said before, she's responsible for posting and monitoring, and that includes summers, evenings, and weekends. And one really unique thing about Tracy is that up until 2 years ago, she and her family lived within the school district of Waunakee, and her kids attended the school district. So she was more than overjoyed to be named as the account manager, and takes a lot of pride in helping to continue to tell this story because she still has very much a vested interest in it, right? Not only do you just get Andrea, you don't just get me, you don't just get Tracy, you actually get our entire team. So we have a team of more than 25 women who work together daily, virtually, within our Facebook group to help take what we do for school districts to the next level, to help troubleshoot, to help say things like, did you notice what Facebook did to us today? And then somebody else chimes in and says, yes, I happened to notice that, that kind of thing. So rest assured, you're getting a lot of expertise. This is all we do. In case you aren't aware so far, you have a district-wide Facebook account now, a district-wide Twitter account, Instagram account, and a YouTube channel as well. On your district Facebook page, you do have one district-wide Facebook page. Sometimes we have districts say, well, wait, why would we want to do that? Why wouldn't we have an elementary Facebook page and then maybe a middle school Facebook page and then a high school Facebook page? Well, our answer always is it's one district and it's one story. And while you might be the parent of a kindergarten student right now, eventually you're going to be the parent of a 12th grader, right? And you want to know the entire story, and your community members are following this Facebook page, and they want to know the entire story. They want to hear what's going on in a second grade classroom and what maybe your student council members are doing. And this what is the name of this upcoming event? Food for Kids? Food for Kids. They want to know about that kind of thing. And so we started posting on your behalf on your Facebook page in early August. This was a Facebook page that had some likes on it. It was a different page before. I forgot which one it was. Was it?
We took one of the schools and we merged it.
Merged it and made it into the district Facebook page. Worked all of our magic on the back end, and you can see that just between the beginning of August and last week, the 1st of October, you guys have really seen some major increases in terms of Facebook fans. The more fans you have, the more people see your story, the higher your algorithm, right? Your Facebook reach by week, your average weekly reach, and that's taking into consideration those early months, or early weeks, in August, where maybe not a lot of posting was going on, just because folks weren't back in school, that kind of thing. But your average weekly reach is more than 3,000 people. That's a pretty powerful communication tool right there. And your average post per your average daily posts, are 2.1 posts per day, and actually that's much, much higher now. Again, that's taking into consideration that in August maybe we're posting twice a week. Tracy's posting at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day, just on Facebook. And sometimes people say, well, why Facebook over Twitter and Instagram? Because we do post on Twitter and Instagram on your behalf as well. That's because Facebook is really king, right? How many of you have a Facebook account? Exactly, right? 75% of women in the United States are on Facebook alone, right? That's a lot, right? And so it's king for sure. But we're going to expect those numbers to climb even more as you end up with more Facebook fans, as more of your staff members start to really understand and see the value, and as your community members start to interact more with the page. Here are a couple of really great posts, just in case you guys missed this. This one was beautiful. Talk about the power of a great photo, right? And being in the moment. And if you look at that one, that reached more than 1,100 people and had 172 reactions, comments, or shares. That means that 172 people actually took the time to do something with that post. That's awesome. Really great. I love this one too because I was a former teacher, so I love it when we get to celebrate our teachers, right? I'm a math teacher. Of course, I have problems, which is super cute. And that one reached more than 1,400 people, 234 reactions, comments, or shares. And then last but not least, I thought this was really great too, the fan school draft. And good, the first photo didn't quite turn out well. Sometimes Facebook uploads photos in a funny way, but the post still reached almost 1,000 people. Really important. Sometimes people will say, how is it that your story reaches more people? How is it that a post ends up with more engagement and gets bumped up higher in Facebook's algorithm? It's all about the interaction. So when you think about that, if you're out there or people are asking you questions about that, I would really encourage you to pass along this piece of information. If you're seeing a really great Facebook post from the school district of Waunakee and you want to somehow interact with it, if you choose to like or love that post, Facebook basically gives that post 1 point and pushes it a little bit up higher in Facebook's algorithm. If you comment on it, Facebook will give it about 7 points, pushes it up even farther in the algorithm, and that means more folks see it. And king truly is the share. If you see a post that you love or you like, make sure that you share it so that other people can see it. That really makes sure that Facebook moves it up in the algorithm. Facebook aside, as I mentioned, you do have a Twitter account, a district-wide Twitter account, and Tracy posts on that Twitter account or tweets out about twice a week in terms of native tweets. That will be more as we get going on. And in the meantime, anyone else who happens to tweet and tweets at the district and or uses the hashtag Waunakee Way. Tracy will retweet those. She goes in about daily and then retweets those based on searching the hashtag. Hashtag is really important on Twitter. So if you have a Twitter account, and we've encouraged your staff as well, if you have a Twitter account and you're tweeting something out that has to do with the school district, be sure to use that hashtag. That is absolutely key in that. Instagram has really exploded in your district, and this is a powerful communication sort of platform, not only for students, middle school and high school students, talk about involving students in the process, that kind of thing, but also for younger parents. You guys have, I'm gonna guess it's probably 600 followers by now. Again, we post on Instagram at least twice a week, and are always sure to use that hashtag as well. Last but not least, you certainly have a YouTube channel now. YouTube happens to be the #2 search engine in the world. We want to make sure that when folks start searching on YouTube that they see the Waunakee Way, right? And so we'll put longer or promotional videos that are sent to us on YouTube before we maybe upload them natively to Facebook or something like that. So again, we're just happy to be part of your team and help you guys celebrate your district one story at a time. We're here to take any positive, negative, or constructive feedback that you may have. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Me too. So what determines Twitter or Facebook?
Oh, I will
If I
tell.
send you something,
Yep.
what determines?
That's a great question. Awesome question. We will always defer to Facebook first. Always. Because that is where the bulk of your followers are, right? The bulk of your folks who are out there, grandparents are on Facebook, that kind of thing. So it will always go to Facebook first if that is possible. And by possible, what I mean is it is entirely within the realm of possibility to break Facebook. In other words, we will post out maximum 5 times a day on Facebook. After that, you're messing with the algorithm. So after that, then we'll start moving them to Twitter and Instagram. That being said, some things just lend themselves better to Twitter or lend themselves better to Instagram. When we get a great high school photo, it's almost always going to go on Instagram as well. It probably will go on Facebook too, but it's going to go on Instagram because guess what? High school kids want to look at themselves. And so all of a sudden, then they're going to like the Instagram account, right, and follow more on that. And Twitter sometimes will do a lot of sports scores, things like that. But it sort of depends on the district. We're still feeling you guys out, and you're still feeling us out in terms of how that's going to move forward. But Facebook is always king.
Okay. And two, with your company managing this, at this point, should we have any staff members sending things independently to Twitter or Facebook on their own, or is it all, at this point, do we expect all messages are going through them?
That's also an outstanding question. In terms of Facebook, because we want it's one district and one story, right, and one Facebook page. We want anything that's needs to go to Facebook to come to us at that social media email address. But we encourage at all times professional Twitter accounts and professional Instagram accounts. Always use the hashtag. Make sure that we know you have that one, and we're able to use an app on Instagram that's repost, and on Twitter we're retweeting. And a lot of Twitter is retweeting, right, and interacting with each other. And a tweet only lives for about 7 minutes, whereas a Facebook story, right? That's right. Thank the Lord. And whereas a Facebook story lives a lot longer. So I hope that answered your questions. Anybody else? Another question? Has anybody followed the page and seen some great stories?
Yes.
Is
Good.
this, sorry, is
Yeah,
this
okay.
person Tracy, is she actually posting
Yeah.
herself?
Yes.
So this isn't automated at all?
No.
So
Because-
so she actually posts literally at 6 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. every single day?
She actually does that, but we use a scheduling tool on Facebook. So Facebook has a scheduling tool. It's a great question. Not a lot of people know about that, but she is constantly monitoring those accounts. We don't ever recommend using a third party to post from because we have no way of knowing how that messes with Facebook's algorithm. So that's one of the things that you get with us. When we say we're in the trenches and that we're interacting with each other all day, every day, like, did you see this, or have you tried this, or maybe do that, we really do mean that. We take this job very seriously.
I assume that like the
those times are targeted for the maximum amount of people being on Facebook.
Correct.
at those
Yeah.
times.
And then you also start to work the algorithm of Facebook in your way. The more often that you post at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we know, right? What do moms do? They get up, they drink a cup of coffee, and they enjoy the 10 minutes of silence, and they scroll on Facebook, right? 7 p.m. or 6 p.m., that another hot time, 3 p.m. when people get out. And as we start to do that more and more, and people interact with it, let's say Joan interacts with it a couple of mornings at 6 a.m., guess what Facebook is going to do? It's going to make sure that Joan sees that at 6 a.m. every morning, and now Joan's liking every single picture, which is awesome, or sharing it because she listened to what I said, that kind of thing. And so then you see your reach go up. It's a really interesting system, let me tell you. And then when Mr. Zuckerberg changes the rules, right, because he likes to do that, then we'll delve in there and find another way. But thanks for noticing that. It's very astute of you.
One that I noticed that I thought was particularly effective, and I hope it gets reach. One of the teachers at the high school was looking for community members who are engineers to pair with their Project Lead the Way Principles of Engineering class. And so I thought that was great, and I did share it. And I had a friend get back to me and say they messaged 2 engineers that they knew, and hopefully that did result in a contact. So. It could be a really powerful tool for teachers
Networking.
that have special projects like that. I thought that was great, and I was very happy to share it.
Yeah, and when they're done with those projects, to not only, of course, to send us something so that Tracy can post out about it, but if they're on Twitter professionally, to grab a few hashtags. You're starting to, a hashtag really binds that entire story, and now those teachers are maybe connecting themselves using a hashtag to other teachers who are doing the same type of thing in a different district, right? Yeah, thank you for that comment, that is. Any other questions? We really love celebrating your students and connecting you guys to your community. We take our job really seriously. We honestly do, even though we have a great time doing it. And so if you ever have a question or a comment or something else that you would like to know from us, or you have why do you do it this way, that kind of thing or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for, okay?
Yeah, a couple other things. Tracy, who's our account manager, Rebecca and I interact with her. Right now it's about every 2 weeks. When we were launching, it was every week. If she sees something that she receives in through that email that she's wondering whether it should be posted or not, if it's questionable, she'll call us. And or she'll just email me, or she'll give me a call and just ask the question. So we're kind of feeling our way through some of those pieces, but I think overall it's gone very, very, very well. We'll be, it'll actually be an article in the paper coming up where Pete, he and I sat down and talked just about kind of the social media effort of ours, and trying to get more community members to really come in and follow what's happening. And we'll be pushing some of these pieces out again to our parents to make sure that we have that. And trying to get more of the kids to interact, because you're right, they live on Instagram and others.
Yes. They'll look at themselves on Facebook, don't think they won't, but they're not commenting. I've watched it because I've done the School District of Reedsburg's page for 3 years, and they're happy to look, but they will like it on Instagram, let me tell you. So then, we know how to do those things too, and that's fun, right? It's a good time as well.
I think it's also I am a social media phobe, personally. Heidi
not surprised, Randy.
I know. And she forced me to have one friend on Facebook. It is Heidi.
It's me. Just the one friend.
Who I've had to explain to my wife who Heidi is.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of superintendents who do, because they have one friend. It's Heidi. Yeah.
True story.
We got to get you out more, Randy.
You do. But it's actually it's a very safe way to be able to post. I mean, there's been pictures I've taken and just sent them in. It's very simple, and they make it very user friendly.
Right, and again, we're here to help you. Right, that's what we're here to do. We're extended staff members of your team here in Waunakee, and that we're here to answer any questions, good, bad, or whatever might come along. Right. So thanks again. We really appreciate celebrating your students. And as someone who used to have to play Waunakee, because I went to Wisconsin Heights, I was super happy when we landed you guys, so thanks a lot. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Perfect. Okay, moving on to the 90-day outlook.
Yeah,
Busy 90 days.
This is a busy 90 days. So what I've included in your packet is just trying to really look out here between now and really our winter break. The majority of our work, we have quite a bit of things happening in the next few weeks. So sitting here tonight with the board meeting, moving through a lot of the pieces are really with the annual meeting and then leading up to some decisions that we have with regards to setting our budget, salary decisions, et cetera, all between now and the November board meeting. So there's quite a few iterations of things that will be happening during that time with special meetings, committee meetings, all really resonating around those aspects that tie into the budget. I believe we have all those dates already out there on our calendars. As we move forward, a few things that you saw that we were discussing in our board development time, particularly around facilities, you'll see that we'll have some facilities committees. Co-curricular committee will be meeting here coming up in December, and part of what that'll be as a report back on how the fall activities have gone, and really I think us further defining what the work of that committee and what we want to do, particularly as we reflect back on the strategic plan. And then we have our curriculum presentations coming up here as well, as far as just understanding what's happening with some of our instructional programs. So the next 90 days are pretty full. I would say probably the next 5 weeks are really the bulk of a lot of things that are moving. So I'll try to keep this updated every month when we come together, just to kind of add another month to it so you can see really what the direction is that we're going. I've also found, and hopefully you have found this helpful too, we had scheduled out at least tentatively when each of the committees were going to meet this year, and we've been really staying on that process. To me, that's been a very helpful piece that came out of some of our feedback from you this past spring. And I think at least looking forward, it's helped us to be a little bit better in planning and looking forward. So any questions about what's coming up the next 90 days? Just kind of gives you an idea of kind of the general bulk of work.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Randy.
Thank you.
Next we have an administrative report, and without Steve here, I think Randy is
That's
going
me.
to talk to us about borrowing.
Yes. I'll try to do Steve justice here. Actually, he's the one who wrote it up, so those were his words. This is actually the same process that we have followed this last year. What we're asking for is a borrowing resolution not to exceed $5.5 million. This is for short-term borrowing. If you recall, because when we receive our dollars in from the state, we get those in September, December, March, and June. And the dollars that we borrow on a short-term basis are really to address those shortfalls as far as when revenues come in and when we have expenses going out. So it's just really a function of our system. We're borrowing a little bit more this year because we spent down some of our fund balance over the last few years. We've allocated some of our dollars that were in fund balance to facility maintenance projects that we had banked during the referendum that we're moving forward with. We also paid off this building. That was part of the piece that came out of fund balance. And then we also had allocated dollars to the improvements at Warrior Stadium. So those pieces were included in drawing down fund balance. The other piece that Steve shared with me is that we were really, really tight last year, even with those dollars within the budget. So we are moving to the $5.5 million. This is a resolution that will allow us to go into consortium with 6 other districts. And then at the time we'll be borrowing here, coming up here in the next few weeks, there'll be a few of us that are signatures on that. But this is just giving us the power to go out and to complete the borrowing with PMA as outlined. This is the same process we used in the previous year, and it worked out very well for us. So what we do need is we need action on this resolution for us to move forward with this, and it needs to be a roll call vote.
I move we approve the resolution for authorizing short-term borrowing.
Question, what are the other 6 districts?
I can tell you that. It's actually in that document if you want to. If you could give me the document, I'll find it.
Resolution?
There's 6 districts.
Oh.
Which are the 6 districts?
While Randy is looking for that, we have a motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And we'll kind of hold during this discussion.
I think it's,
Julie, you second?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
are these just the signature pages?
No, everything's in there. It's probably, it's the.
I apologize, I don't know.
There are other Wisconsin districts though,
They're
correct?
all Wisconsin districts, it's Verona, it's kind of a mixed match of different size districts, they're not all like Madison Ring districts. They're, group.
And what we're adopting and passing gives flexibility for PMA to strike when the iron's hot with the best rates, is that correct?
Right, that's correct. This is the one that allows us to actually watch the markets and then act accordingly.
Can't exceed 2.75%.
Jack, would it be okay if they just got that later?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll get that to the board, and I apologize for not being able to pull it up right away. There's 6 other districts. They're varying in size from smaller districts. I believe Verona's in that as far as within the Madison ringed area. They're a group that PMA works with and that Steve has tied in. They go together as a consortium because they feel they can get a better rate, and then we can also share the costs of the borrowing. So that's kind of how that process works.
Okay, so we have a motion and second, and any other discussion? And we need a roll call, Jack?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you. Moving on to announcements, National Merit Scholarship.
Yes, in your packet, you will find that we have some National Merit Scholarship recipients or folks moving forward in that process. Samuel Korth, Jenna Grady, I apologize, I don't know. Grady. Dane Lupke, and Kendra Gearing. So excited to have those students excelling and moving forward in that process.
Perfect. Thank you, congratulations. Third Friday count.
Third
which
Friday
we've
count.
seen.
Just a couple things. When you take a look at the email that you received from Steve with regards to the third Friday count, and then you look at the actual document that is included in here with our total revenue cap being 4,074. The email says 4,077. So that was just a transposing of a number. So it is 4,074 is what we are using as our revenue cap number. That is an increase of 53 from last year. We are also up from our enrollment projection as far as a head count for this current year. When you look at this report, it's always confusing because the FTE number is your full-time equivalency, which also incorporates all of your...
I tried to do the math.
Yeah, it's not real good math. It's good math, it's just, all math is good, Sean, you know that.
Problematic.
It's complicated
It's
math.
problematic
Yeah,
math.
you don't, yeah, a kid often doesn't always equal 1, so like a 4K is worth 0.6, early childhood's 0.5. So they count differently for FTE, and then you throw in summer school, which turns hours of instruction into an FTE. Those all roll together. But when you take a look at what our head count actually is at 4,340, that was based off of what we had estimated was 4,297. So you can see that we are up certainly within our head count, which will also be a positive impact for us when we go forward with our budget revisions. when you take a look at what we'll be doing next week at the annual meeting, we will be acting upon the budget and really the levy pieces. That'll be based off of the information that you've already seen. So the final update to all the numbers with the budget and all the counts will take place at our setting of the levy at the end of the month. With Steve's absence, we're not making all of those changes for next week. We'll be acting on the levy per what we have, and then we will be setting the levy with the updated numbers at the end of the month at our special meeting. So that's kind of how that works forward, but third Friday count information is attached. The best way to understand it is to read Steve's email. That probably gives the clearest explanation, and just realizing that in his one line where he has 477, it should be 474. So,
Thank you.
yep.
And last.
The last one.
Category,
Yeah.
Veteran of the Year.
Veteran of the Year. This is something that just actually came in the mail to us last week, sorry. And it's from a Waunakee School District graduate, Kim Schreiber-Graff, who graduated in 2004, and she was named Veteran of the Year. So we had some information that was included within your packet, which we thought was kind of interesting just to pass on as far as where one of our alumni has received some notification.
Very cool. Moving on to committee reports, starting with curriculum.
You see the update in your packet. We reviewed quite a bit of information of student tracker data and assessments. There is no action items, but if you have further questions or comments, or Tim, would you like to say a few more words?
Well, we have the assessment report in the deck for tonight, and so we'll take a quick walk through that. This is the update that you get on an annual basis, and this goes over the assessments that our kids take in the spring, which is the state assessment program plus the AP, the advanced placement. And the ones we're going to focus on mostly tonight are the forward and the ACT, the major components of the state assessment system. And the pieces that'll show up on the state accountability report cards, which we're currently in the preliminary process, and those will become public in about a month. So just 7 high-level takeaways, positives, and again, you may have seen this in the State Journal last week. Overall, strong forward English language arts and mathematics results at all grade levels. If you were to kind of collapse all of those different grade levels into the bigger buckets, you would find that our aggregate English language arts and mathematics percent proficient led Dane County. The high school, the junior statewide ACT is 10th in the state among traditional high schools. Our Aspire results, which we're not going to talk about too much tonight, but that's part of the assessment system in 9th and 10th grade. We're stable in 10th and higher in 9th. Aspire is aligned with that junior ACT, so that's a positive. And our advanced placement participation and percent of our students scoring 3 or better on the advanced placement exams was stable, so that's a positive. Areas for further attention, when we drew this up, Brian and I, and we're still concerned about it to a degree, maybe not worried but concerned, was that we did have a dip in our average scores and percent meeting benchmarks, and then we saw the county table and we realized it was more of a larger scale trend. So we're kind of moving with the tide there. Maybe a different form of the ACT that was a little more challenging in the spring. Also our gaps, as we've talked about before, we still have those. Those are areas of continued attention. And we do have a bit of a downward trajectory in our students with disabilities in math on the forward. We're going to give that some additional attention this year. So again, this is showing you overall how our results came out, moving left to right on the forward for all kids, students of color combined, low-income students, students with disabilities. You can see it broken out on the table below. Again, this illustrates the kind of gaps we have. This is not taking it grade level by grade level. This is taking that approach that I referred to earlier where we collapse or consolidate grades 3 through 8 on the forward. This is the same picture for math. Again, a very similar picture. I will say that although you know, we're very concerned about our gaps, and I think it's important to note this is something everybody's working on in the county, and if you were to look at our absolute percentages of, for example, low-income students or students of color and their percent proficient or advanced, despite our gaps, we do have the highest percentage of our low-income students that are proficient or better in both ELA and math in the county, and the same for students of color. This shows you our multi-year trend on the forward, and again, generally a stable picture. Notice that the lower margin's at 50%, so it's going to show, amplify a little change at the top, but these are actually overall very stable numbers. This is breaking it down for our students with disabilities in math. This is that one area that I highlighted as a concern point, so you can see that while our percent proficient or better for our non-disabled students is on a 3-year upward move, we actually have a corresponding downward move for our students with disabilities, and that's what's got our attention right now. This is the table you probably saw in the State Journal last week. If we were to kind of go across, you would see in most of these areas we were near or at the top for the county. Moving along to the ACT for juniors, the first thing I kind of want to reground us in is ways to think about the ACT. The state, what you see in the State Journal is a distillation of the ACT results that the state uses for federal accountability. And that's certainly information that for us will translate over to our high school accountability report card that you'll see in a month or two. But that number is not the number that a typical junior would send off to a college that they were applying to. Instead, they're going to be looking more at the traditional numbers, 18s, 22s, 32s, and these correspond to different benchmarks that ACT has identified over the years that correspond to a 50% chance of a B or better, or a 75% chance of a C or better on your first year in college grades. So for example, 50% of students that get a 23 on the ACT Science typically get a B or better in freshman biology. So when you hear us talk about the benchmarks, this is where they come from. This shows our percentage of students meeting these college and career readiness benchmarks, where we are at and where Wisconsin is at. And again, you can see, as is typically the case with large-scale standardized assessments, we're outperforming the state. This is our 4-year trend. We now are 4 years of juniors taking the ACT. Again, a pretty stable picture for the most part. Julie?
So just quickly to
Yes.
back up just a second, Tim. So this is the one that is the state mandated test where everybody takes it on the same day.
Great question,
So-
yes.
So I think there may be some concern on some of these numbers sometimes, but is it also not true that some students who have already taken the test and were really happy with the score opt out of taking this?
So that's yes.
Some of our higher excelling students would not be reflected in this particular score, is that correct?
That's very true, Julie, and thank you for bringing that up. So again, this is a test the state provides for all juniors as part of the statewide assessment system for free. And you know, for those of you that are familiar with kind of the ACT process, when you sign up for the ACT, you get a certain number of included score reports with your test registration. And then if you want additional reports above and beyond that, you pay extra. So the state is providing every junior in the state a free ACT administration with score reports. Now in reality, as a student, you choose whether to do those reports and where they go. And it's not like, if you don't identify any place to receive your reports, it's not like ACT is going to grab your test events, throw darts at a wall, and randomly send them off to places without your approval. But kids are cautious, and we do have some students that really, and they're often some of our highest achieving students, get very early and strategic in thinking about where they want to attend college, what ACT score they feel will position them for admissions. And if they have that score, and some students will start taking the ACT earlier than spring of their junior year, they'll bank it. And even though they have, it's truly the case that they have control over where their data goes, a lot of strong kids, once they have that high score banked, they are not going to want, it doesn't matter what Brian or I say to them. They're just going to say, I'm done, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So yes, Julie, there are some of our stronger kids that might have 30s in here that wouldn't be in this pool. Mark?
So is there any thought that the state would allow those scores at some point to become counted? It seems inaccurate then in terms of the reality. And if the University of Michigan is accepting the score, why wouldn't the state of Wisconsin?
You know, that's a good question. From the state's perspective, though, they want to have that one statewide test event. So if you took it in December, that's the December administration. It's a different form than it was administered in late February, early March, so it's different. Where that test event will come in, Mark, is that we get a separate report. It used to come out in August. ACT added some summer administration, so now it's going to come out any day now, where you get a graduate report. And that is the last test event for your senior group. So if a student's last test event was, say, December of their junior year, that high score would be in there. If a student took the ACT a few times after the statewide ACT, whatever their final score was, maybe December, maybe February of their senior year, that would be the last score. So it shows up in there, it doesn't show up for accountability though.
And the other piece with, how long has it been that all students mandated to take it?
This is our 4th year,
Okay.
which is,
So those are reflected in the area scores then as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yep,
Very good.
4 years of this now. These are the average scores. So again, back here, it's the percent meeting those benchmarks that are tied to first-year performance in colleges and universities. The average scores are a little different, but again, the story is the same. Our students outperforming the state average. And then you can see where we were in this table. And this is an entirely different thing. This is not percent meeting ACT benchmarks. This is not your average score. This is percent meeting the state's proficiency benchmark, which is a different number altogether. But again, you can see the statewide numbers at the bottom. You can see the Dane County table at the top. And you can see that we're in the first position for all 3 of these. And you know, obviously that's a great reflection on the work of our kids and the work of our teachers from kindergarten all the way up to senior year. And the only reason I don't add 4K in this is we didn't have 4K when these kids started out. Within the state, this is from a table the Journal Sentinel put out. These weren't ranked by district, they were ranked by high school. And so if you go to that second column on the right, you'll see charter. So you can see that some of the top schools in here are actually charter programs, some of them fairly small. So they're selective programs. But then you can see among traditional high schools, we were in the 10th position in the state. That's kind of the overall picture relative to the state. On the AP tests, you can see our long-term trend has been a significantly increasing number of students taking AP and total exams for AP. And despite over time, you know, more than a quadrupling of exams and students participating, you can see that the overall percent of students at a 3 or better has remained constant, which again, great credit to our kids and our teachers in the advanced placement courses. And that brings us to questions.
You've also added more AP years, right?
We've added more AP, so you know,
Drive the numbers up.
that's been a big part of driving the numbers up. In particular, you know, some of our biggest courses, AP Psych, we've had for a while, but within the last decade, we've added AP Language and Composition, and we've modified how we present AP US History, which has really driven up participation in AP US History. Mark?
So on the forward exam, do we, and if we don't, would it be reasonable to be charting how much of an improvement we see with our students of color, low-income disability, who are below proficiency over 4 years? So, I mean, I can look at that chart and it says, okay, at this grade level there, we have X percent below proficiency. But when we get this picture, we never see how that 4th grade is doing at the 8th grade. And to me, that number is probably more important to how well we're doing in some ways than what that snapshot for that
Right.
1 year is. So do we chart that? Is it anywhere, or is that a number that's just lost over time because we're not doing it?
So one short-term number is tracked. And so as part of the state accountability system, one of the 4 accountability areas on the report card is student growth. And that is year-to-year progress between grades in the state assessment system. So for example, if you were to look at our 3 elementary schools, in fact, I was just meeting with Dean and Katie over at Prairie on this today. For growth, on the Prairie report card, Arboretum, Heritage report cards, it will be their spring 3rd grade score to their spring 4th grade score. And because it's a value-added system, the state uses a multi-level statistical model that the university provides, and it does take into account certain student background factors like race, ethnicity, prior score status, disability, low income. So that will track a year-to-year change. It does not take a group of students, say in 3rd grade, and takes them all the way through to, you know, further years. Now, if we wanted to do that, we could do our own analysis where we looked at students, similar to what we did with the RTI last year. We take a snapshot of students in time, carry them forward, and see where they turn up. We could do that. Sounds like you'd like us to do that.
I think it would be helpful information.
It wouldn't surprise me if teachers had students who were struggling, that they themselves would be doing that too. I bet the current classroom teacher would go back and go, is this new that this student is struggling, or is this, you know, have we bumped him up? So I bet
I don't think there's any question that people look at that on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah.
I think the question of you take, you know, we had the forward exam for the first time in the spring of 16. So, you know, anywhere to this time have we taken, or has the state taken, say 3rd graders from spring of 16 and tracked them on the forward to the spring of 18 as 5th graders?
Right.
No, we have not done that.
Right.
So we could do that if we wanted to.
Well, I think it is happening in the RTIs and the PLCs.
Yes.
But as a school board, it's nice to see all the successes, but some of the greater successes, I think, would be seen in, okay, so how are we helping the fringe performers improve over time, or are we? And I'm sure we are, but, and the number may not be what we want, but to at least see it would be very helpful. I just look at the numbers, and, you know, 24% of the 3 through 4th grade is 66 students. You know, and that's a lot of kids to have at. It may not be a lot compared to 4,000, but when you look at, if we still have 66 kids graduating at below proficiency or basic, how are we preparing them to meet their needs after school? And so that number would be nice to see. Is it going down?
And 66 is not a small number. I mean,
No.
if we put 66 kids in this room, it would fill this room
Exactly.
to the walls.
Exactly.
So we can do that. And, you know, the nice thing is I mean, some parts of our student population have more mobility than others, but we're a fairly stable district. we could do that. I'm not gonna go far off track on this, but, Randy goes good. But, Journal Sentinel, last Friday into Saturday, and it's still online, ran a really, powerful piece. There is really a data analysis piece where they looked at mobility, student mobility within Milwaukee. And if you haven't had a chance to cruise over to the education section of the Journal Sentinel, the information's powerful, and the way they brought the graphics together was also very well presented. Strongly encourage you to do that to see some of the challenges facing our state. They also had a data table where you could then look up any school in the state. Okay. Other questions on our assessment piece? Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Tim.
If I can have a second before we go on.
Sure.
Well, Tim was presenting the beginning of his report. I did find our consortium for
Okay.
that, for the borrowing. I apologize, I couldn't put my fingers on it right away. But it's Waunakee, Wisconsin Rapids, Nakusa, Monona Grove, Verona, St. Francis, which is over by Milwaukee, and then Edgerton. So that's our 7 districts that come together for that. So Rapids, Nakusa, Waunakee, Verona, Monona Grove, Edgerton, and St. Francis.
Thank you. Next committee is HR. Again, there are no action items, but we spent about almost 2 hours discussing a lot of different things in the HR realm. Keeping in mind, we have that goal of compensating employees to retention and giving them that greatest value, but looking at all employee groups. We're looking at some reports that Steve's group is putting together for our next meeting. But another very interesting discussion was retirement eligibility, which I think has kind of stalemated at the board and caused us to be concerned with certain individuals that weren't old enough or didn't have, you know, the exact number of years. Actually, David came up with a great idea, kind of combining years of service and age together, coming up with this magic number 70 to give us a little more flexibility. Again, nothing is ready for approval or, you know, being put in handbooks, but it's something that we're looking at. And the last thing is looking at retirement benefits for classified staff, which right now is really non-existent, or just, you know, looking at, in some of the groups, they get paid for sick time and what that means, and trying to align it to make all of our employee groups a little bit more alike. I think that's kind of the thread that I feel is coming out. And Dave and Julie, I know Connie is not with us tonight to add her 2 cents, and Randy, if you want to say any more, again, no action items and ongoing discussions.
I think part of what the committee talked about, I think Joan did a nice job summarizing it. We meet again next week, and budget meets next week as well. The biggest piece right now is bringing forward some of the costings per the conversations that we had at the last HR meeting, and then looking at that in parallel to how does the budget look for this year as we make compensation recommendations for the November board meeting. So that's really what that was leading up to, and there'll be 2 more meetings next week, with HR meeting on Tuesday, and I believe budget meeting either next Thursday or Friday. Yep.
Moving on to facility, which was really a all-group committee, so I don't know if there's anything to really report out there.
We'll follow up with the facilities committee. We have our 3rd Friday numbers to Mark Roffers. I have a meeting with him, I think, on Wednesday to really talk through that piece. We'll bring that back to facilities. Then we'll probably have at least 2 or 3 more facilities committee items before we kind of round some things back here to the full board.
I'd just like to say, I think it was a really good experience, an opportunity to actually see what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that opportunity to get together as a group and
Yeah,
take the
I think
tours.
it was.
Bad weather and all, Jack.
Yeah, that's right.
Bad weather. Yeah, we need to realize sometimes being able to see it is helpful.
Yeah, it is. Moving on to policy committee.
All right, let me, if I can have Rebecca pull up our policy. You have a revised policy in front of you in paper, so if you'll pull that up, that's actually the one that I'm going to talk through on the screen here. What I'm gonna do, Rebecca, is I'm just gonna walk through each item and I just tell you what was going on here. So when we departed last month, we really had, the charge that we were to take back was looking at language to add in to list out the specific holidays that we were considering, and then also to have language that if we did not list them, what would really be that coverall language look like. As Tim and I met with Kirk Strang, our legal counsel, he did review the whole policy, so you will see some other pieces that are really just language aspects. So as you look at I'm just gonna start at the very front page. This is really just cleanup language that he felt this brings, and Tim and I reviewed all of this. We believe it just brings more clarity, but doesn't really change the spirit of what we're trying to do. So you can keep going. And it's the same thing really all the way through this page, is just language that we felt brings some clarity to the language that we had proposed in the first draft. Keep going, Rebecca. Yeah, and all the way till we get to here is essentially just clean up and clarity language. Starting at point 8 is where the departure happens. This is really the language that we put together, and there's 2 versions of it. One includes the listing of the different specific observance dates, and as Mr. Barak had articulated, there are some spelling pieces that we will clean up there as well. And then there's also some pieces that we, you can keep going, Rebecca, sorry. Go to the next paragraph right here, please stop. This paragraph is these 2 paragraphs are modified from what was in board book. And it was really based off of some feedback. Joan and I had a conversation this morning. And one of the things that we discussed was the language up there did not talk about anything about that if you were excused from that homework, exam, et cetera, that there was a makeup opportunity. So we wanted to make sure that there was some language that related to that. So this piece is new, and I just added that today. And it says any missed work, projects, or exams will be rescheduled or made up by the student at a time determined by the teacher when it does not interfere with the religious observance or religious holiday. So that was one piece that through a conversation Joan and I had that she felt was important from a teacher's point of view to add. The other piece was a piece that Mr. Barak brought up in his comments, which was with regards to sincerely held religious beliefs. Tim and I had some conversations on this last week when we were just releasing board book. There was actually some additional language here that we felt was even more constricting that we took out. But as we reviewed this, we felt that taking out the part starting with must and ending with parents really made some sense. And we felt that just trying to identify what a sincerely held religious belief is really hard to define. But we felt that it was appropriate, at least to keep in that students that asked to be excused from an exam or major project deadline may be asked to demonstrate that taking exams or submitting major projects and religious observance dates in question does in fact interfere with the practices of that student's religion. We felt that it at least opened the door then for a conversation with regards to what the conflict was. But we felt that the language, and I believe this is the line Mr. Barak was talking about, we took that out, or we're recommending that that come out. So this version, if you can go back up, thank you, includes the Islamic, Jewish, and Christian holidays that are articulated here. And then if you go to the last part, Rebecca, that's where the or is. This language is all the same generally, except it does not list the holidays. But we made the similar changes. So what I present to you tonight is really the policy that we've been reviewing for the last 2 months, with now the addition of the language to add the holidays, and then also the clarification language with regards to makeup work and exams.
Julie?
As part of the process, Randy, did we have opportunity to get feedback from building administration or staff in terms of their concerns with identifying particular dates?
We did not take it to staff.
Okay.
We've talked, I mean, I think just generally with some administration of what we were looking at. I guess from our perspective, and Tim and I have had some conversations, he's leading up with Katie Grundle, really the committee that will be kind of looking at how you implement that. In the absence of listing the holidays, one of the questions that I would ask if I was teaching was, well, which holidays? And to at least have those kind of primary ones listed, we feel is helpful. Also in board book, you can see Rebecca went back for me and looked at kind of when those different dates fell. Some of them were more solid dates, and others were ones that flowed just based on the calendar year. But we felt that those, as we reviewed them, that they were things that we could work with. That was our perspective.
Well, I think we need a motion to begin discussion. So I'd make a motion that we adopt the option with the listed holidays.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
I'd like to say, I thought the part where you provided the list of dates over the next 2 years was actually the most helpful, because when you look through those dates, there really wasn't any real conflict with anything we had going on, other than one, which is something no teacher can handle, which was parent-teacher conferences were on Yom Kippur, which is an evening ceremony, I believe. Most of the observance would be at night. And we put the entire senior levels basically will have their parent-teacher conferences that night, which means no student and teacher can get around that. It is something that if we don't identify on a district-wide level, it really isn't resolved. The other thing is, looking back at last month's notes, you had a meeting with Kurt Strand about this, and for several reasons, he recommended going with the list of holidays. And since he has the most experience with the legal aspects of it, which has been brought up, is that, are we creating a legal problem by listing holidays? He's saying we create a legal problem by not listing the holidays. And I think that we have more than enough school districts in Dane County that have already listed the holidays, in fact, longer list than we have, that I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and
Why
I think
we
just
would go against that advice.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, one of the things that Kirk shared with us was, I'm not sure if it was as much legal as practical, of saying we're going to, if you are a teacher and you're in a situation of looking at knowing ahead of time so you could plan, could put you into a position then where there's not a question of which ones you're working around. I think the legal aspect comes is with regards to then needing to have kind of a timetable of when you would, how much notice. And so that was a piece that he brought up, was in the absence of these, like 8 dates, that it's a matter of then you're always going to have to be kind of asking and seeking that or waiting for it, and this way you can plan around it. So I think it had a little bit of legal aspects to it, but I think a lot of it was from a practical standpoint.
Julie?
So I'm just curious, listing the dates, and then from what I'm hearing Dave say, the intention is avoid conflicts that would allow you to attend the service. But, you know, I'm not sure, and I'm admitting ignorance, I don't know enough about some of these holidays. Is the practice that you need to be in the state of grace and excused from extra work, certain other activities, and it's not just a matter of an hour of an evening service at night? Or are we saying don't scheduling anything on these dates?
So when as we took a look at this, I mean, and that's a little bit of the conversation I think we may want to have, is this is really written with exams and major academic type pieces. conversation that Tim and I had was, and as Dave alluded to, there's a number of the Madison Ring schools that have a list of these. They're relatively consistent district to district. And there's agreements amongst like the athletic conferences that they stay away from certain dates. So that's a piece that we don't have within the group that we work within the conference we work in. So we did not include any of the athletic pieces, but you're getting to other pieces. Where do you go with conferences? Where do you go with concerts, etc.? And I think some of this may be pieces that we have to just either deal with administratively in part of our rules, or two, be a piece that we need to bring back here as we kind of get more experience with the policy. But to your question, I'm not sure exactly to the depth of practice that I don't have that understanding as well with all of those. It's probably a piece that we will learn as we progress through this.
But what's the intention with the way we've written the policy?
The way
Is
it's
that you
written-
skip those dates for tests
Right now, you skip it for tests.
No projects.
Okay.
That's what it states.
on that
No
day.
due dates on that
Major
day.
projects is what it states.
I would have to agree with Mr. Brock today. I think the 20% is too high of, I would like to lower that to 10%. In the high school, 10% is a letter grade, and a letter grade is significant enough that it should be excused from, if we're adopting this, I feel 20% is too high.
I would agree.
Well, I would err on the wisdom of former teachers on that, in terms of percentage meaning a lot more, so I
10% is
10 or
a
20
letter grade.
is arbitrary to me, but if you think
That's
10 is
a
better,
whole
then that
letter-
makes
that's a
sense.
huge
That's a whole
percentage.
letter grade, and that's a huge amount of anybody's grade.
Yep.
That's fine with us.
So we kind of have to modify our motion.
Have to ask for
Where's
amendment to the motion.
where's the 20%, 10%?
It's in the last
It,
line.
it defines what a major
It
project is.
defines what a major.
Brady,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what a major
Brady,
project
who
is.
provides the dates, some of these dates change throughout the year.
We would have to provide them on an annual basis, right?
So you put these on the calendar then? Is it planned?
Yeah, Tim and I just talked about that today. We'd make sure that staff know, we'd put it on like either our Google Calendar or something and push it out.
Mike?
So, I think I voiced this the last meeting, but I actually relatively strongly disagree with the practice of putting specific holidays in the schedule. My concern that I brought up over why I thought it was a legal issue is not because of notice or anything like that, but more of an equal protection issue for people who are not included in this, because
Yeah.
I understand the desire to be inclusive and to specifically list certain things for purposes of planning. But by listing this list, it's not an inclusive list, it's an exclusive list. We are counting out every other one that we have not deemed apparently valuable enough to be listed as a holiday here. And I don't think that should be our policy, that we're picking winners in terms of which holidays are important enough to include here. And I like the way that the second option is written, so that these specific holidays can be excluded if you need to not be there for those days. Now, the additional part that I probably don't know as much about, because I'm not a teacher and I haven't been in the schools on these days, is these holidays, if we specifically list them, incorporate all of or a portion of at least 16 days. So we're not just picking one day. The Passover, as we have is written, is 4. Rosh Hashanah includes part of 3. Yom Kippur is part of 2. Both the Islamic holidays are part of 2 days, and the 3 Christian ones are 1 day each. So I guess I'm very uncomfortable with including up to 16 days that are excluded from planning, specifically without talking to the people who are in the schools actually having to deal with this on a day-to-day basis.
Go ahead.
I would like to respond to that. If you look at the religious holiday observances PDF that was in the board book, you'll see a list of the dates for the next 2 years. And if you look at Al Fitr, basically it's the last Wednesday of the school year. Probably not going to really interfere with anything. Next year it's the Sunday of Memorial Weekend. not gonna interfere with anything.
Except for text.
Then when you go down to Al Adha, please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing these. There's no school because it's new teachers report this year. Next year it's Saturday and Sunday.
Let's everyone
So-
one, so it's gonna start interfering with the school in the future, cause it,
It progresses.
But if you look, the way they're set up, most of them don't interfere. I mean, the biggest interference we do is we say basically no athletic or after-school activities on Wednesdays because of Catholicism. I mean, if you want to talk about totally messing up the school calendar, there's the biggest one there. And we're already naming religious holidays in our calendar. We picked one religion and said that's the only winner. This is trying to get it so that we're looking far enough in advance. The fact that we have listed certain ones, we still have the language in there saying, as recommended by the attorney. We list the dates and we put in the language that states that for anything not listed, this is how it's covered. By going the other way where we're saying only nothing's gonna be listed, well, we already have one religion listed. We're just listing a couple more, and when you look at the majority of students, we just put parent-teacher conferences on a religious holiday for one of them, and no student and teacher can deal with that, only we can. And if we're not willing to at least deal with the major ones, then we need to stop dealing with the Christian religion. If we're not gonna say we're gonna deal with the three major ones. And we already do that. So
Let's get rid of Christmas break.
that's exactly what you're saying to two other religions, is get rid of their version of Christmas break. And yet, we already have major school districts doing this for the past several years, and they haven't had lawsuits, they haven't had problems. And the one attorney who we pay to tell us educational policy recommended it. I'm trying to understand why we're walking away from it.
Mark?
I'd have to agree with Dave and everything he said. In addition to that, from a teacher perspective, if we don't have the dates, it's now on me and the families to make sure that there are no ambiguities, there are no confusions, there are no conflicts. And there's only one sect of religion, Christianity, where someone doesn't have to say, I'm a Christian, so I'm really not going, I don't have to take a test on this, or I don't want to take a test because it interferes with my practices. The impact that I see is minimal by listing the three major religions. And I'm comfortable in the future. If we have a larger segment of students that's in another religion, we add it to the list out of respect for their cultural differences. In our vision statement, we talk about embracing cultural differences, celebrating them, and yet here, if I'm Hebrew or Islamic, I have to say, I practice this religion, so please don't schedule a test if we don't list the dates. Why would we do that? Unintended bias, unintended exclusion of rights that other students get. I don't know how we can do that as a school board.
The other thing that I wondered about, I know it has caused problems in the past, for example, marching band performances that happen on Sundays, they're a major part of the grade. And there are some Christian religions that don't allow you to participate in anything other than family activities and religious services for that day. We've never honored that. I mean, we give them an alternative. So I think as long as we're providing alternatives consistently, and that has been our practice, I don't understand what we benefit by naming these dates when we could be taking days off the calendar that don't even affect a single one of our students.
Let's go on Good Friday. Because it's Good Friday. Because Christians don't want it either, because they have to celebrate their holy day.
But, you know, that's an assumption too. I don't know how far
By
we've ever.
calendar, it's not a assumption. That is why we don't have school on Good Friday, because it's Good Friday.
It's not because people are going to church. I
Because-
mean, I'm sorry, it's,
We do it because it's a Christian holy day. That's why it's off. Otherwise, we could be in school. It's not because it's Easter weekend.
What,
And if it were, it shouldn't be a part of that anyways.
and I agree, but I think it's a mistake to have off on these days automatically because they're Christian holidays. I don't think we ameliorate that mistake by adding more days that we're off.
correct.
But we're already off on Good Friday. Have been historically forever. We just don't call it Good Friday. Is that one of
Call it
our
spring
conference days? I don't know what it is.
We
So
call it spring break.
we don't run spring break congruent with the
Right.
Easter anymore. We run it, that runs separate. But you're right, we always have that Friday off
And
and
the
off on
following
that
Monday.
Monday. And it's kind of a midterm break.
Funny how that works out.
Isn't it?
Mhm.
And so if you have to make Hebrew or Islamic or some other religion, how do you feel about that?
As, just to respond to what Julie said, as a teacher, when we initially talked about dates, I have to say, I was pretty opposed to it because I thought, oh my God, taking all those days
Yeah.
off, and that just piles, you know, if you remove 10 days from the calendar or however many it was, then all those subjects have to remove those days, and that means kids get loaded up on like days, and I just thought that when you have nobody in your class, that it might affect. I guess I've really changed my perspective, seeing what the days really are, and really the impact is so minimal, and I think it sends a message and it validates those religions as important, and we include them all. I mean, I guess I have changed from a teaching perspective. I don't feel it's restrictive as I once thought. Seeing the actual dates, they're pretty minimal impact.
I'm just interested in doing what serves the most students the best.
I think we all are. And, you know, one thing, this is a policy, and with all policies, it's new, it's different, and I think we embark to the best that we feel in our hearts. And in a year, if we feel it needs modifications, we have that opportunity at all times. So we look at it again.
Well, I would suggest then that we do look at the whole Good Friday, Easter Monday practice.
Yeah.
That should not be an assumption on our calendars then. I'm more likely to want to walk it back that way.
And Christmas on a Wednesday or Thursday or Monday?
Christmas break.
I mean,
You
you
know,
can
it
argue
just-
all day whether
we
that's
can-
turned secular or not. I mean,
You definitely can argue all that.
yeah.
So,
Uh,
kind of coming back to this, there is a motion on the table for the first version. I have suggested modifying 20% to 10%. So we would need to amend the motion.
So I amend my motion to modify the percentage to 10%.
Second.
Let me agree with something.
Mike's on our side now.
And just to clarify, the version we're working off is the one in front of you.
Correct.
Correct,
Yes.
with the other modifications that were made earlier in the day, which I appreciate, because I was nervous about that. So, any other discussion on our current?
I just will say, you did a good job doing this. I also am disappointed that until it hit us here tonight, we really, it feels a bit rushed for that big of change from first reading to approving it and adopting it as policy. But I'm not gonna slow it up over that.
So we have to vote on the amendment first?
I don't know, you're my,
Normally,
my
yes, if you
expert.
have an amendment, you have to vote on the amendment separately first.
Okay.
Then you vote on the entire thing as it's amended if that passes.
Okay, so, any discussion on that amendment of 10%? So, that is a motion, and so all in favor of amending to the 10%?
Aye.
Now we're ready to go back to the original motion with the amendment of 10%. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Very good.
That what you need?
So, just so the board's aware, with the policy being approved, one of the pieces that Tim is moving forward with is with a staff committee that is continuing, that will take the policy and will continue to look at that from an implementation standpoint, and then having dialogues as far as how we can operate that from an administrative standpoint. But we can also do, given the just amount of time we've spent the last really 3 months kind of looking at this different policy in different ways, is bringing this back at a point in the future, just so you can kind of see how this has all gone and what's really resulted from.
Moving on to consent agenda. So we could take it all at one big chunk, or you can pull anything out you might like.
Motion to approve the entire agenda.
Motion by Dave,
Second.
second by Jack. Any discussion on any of the items in the consent agenda?
I would just say this in general, that I think the consent agenda now is getting long enough, and I know we did this to improve efficiency of our meetings, but in particular, I am not comfortable with the amount of stuff that goes through the monthly finance reports that we pretty much pass without discussing. So in the future, I would like to have us perhaps rethink whether that item in particular is worthy as a separate
And
discussion
maybe
item.
we can put that on one of our board developments and think about the,
It's just a
the
lot.
consent agenda in general for
Right.
board development.
Right.
Good idea. Thank you, Julie. Any other concerns about that tonight? All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Board business, we have the listening sessions that we want to sign up for. I don't know if those have started going around. And
I printed one, so, and I guess I will just add, there are 7 sessions listed here, there's 7 of us on the board. It's helpful, I think, if at least 3 people sign up for all the items, because that way if somebody can't make it last minute, we're not stuck with only one person showing up.
But you can.
No more than 4, no more than 3.
No
More
more
than
than
that,
3,
yeah.
but if we each sign up 3 times, to the best of our ability, then
And
that would work.
sign up for as many as you can, because I might be moving you guys around a little bit.
Don't without asking.
I was gonna put my name
But I
on
mean, if you
last
sign up,
because I'm probably
you know, if all of
more
a sudden there's
flexible.
4 on 1 or whatever.
Yep.
so we're gonna start circulating that and try to get that filled out. The other thing I have on board business is last call for attending the Region 12 meeting, Monona Grove, October 23rd. You need this by tomorrow, I understand?
I'm going to make the reservation tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
I've got 3 of you.
3.
Good.
I'm on.
I'm on. I'm
You're
here.
on. Mark's on.
All right.
Any other joiners? If not, or if so, let Rebecca know. October 23rd, Monona Grove. We can figure out how to transport.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Do you have anything you wanna talk about, board business?
Nope, I think we've covered everything.
Future agendas and meetings?
The only committee meeting I need to schedule at this point is a budget meeting, probably the week of November 5th. So budget is Mark, Gary, and Jack. Yeah,
I'm out of town November 5th through the
all right, what about if I went back a week and I went to like Thursday the 1st?
When?
You can.
Morning? Because
What-
the morning would be hard on Thursday.
Well, it could
Friday
be,
the second would be better if you want a morning meeting.
yeah.
that would be
If we did an
November
early
2nd.
morning, I don't mind Friday. Yeah.
That's November 2nd.
Yep,
Yeah, I don't think
so that'd be, so Mark, Gary, Jack, so that would,
Yeah.
so if we did the 2nd and we did, what time works for you, Mark?
7:30.
7:30?
Does that give us enough time?
I think so. Tentatively put that there. That'll just give us an opportunity as we've kind of looked at the finalization of the budget the week before, that we will have an opportunity for the budget committee to just see how everything lines up with the salary pieces before it comes to the full board. I think we've already have our special meetings we already voted on, is that correct, Rebecca, previously?
Yep, the
So I
curriculum
think that's,
presentations.
right, so
all-
we
all
have
the other
that,
ones.
right.
And I would just like to say that the curriculum committee is happening tomorrow, but we also scheduled in advance, and we were gonna try this experiment of doing it the day after the board meeting.
It's not
not working really good. So we'll go ahead and meet tomorrow, but we will be discussing tomorrow in committee to revise the dates for the curriculum committee meetings.
I agree. Okay, I think we're ready to call it a night.
It's before 9.
I know it. Motion to adjourn. Hurry up, hurry up.
Mike, come on. Move.
Mike,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Jesus
Before 9
Christ,
o'clock.
clock out.
There you go.